I do. I always hate this part. Welcome, everybody, to episode 3 of Untapped. We are here at the amazing WOW Event Center on Broadway. Thank you to the Brian Nelsons for letting us use this space. It's really kind of remarkable if you got a wedding or whatever. This place is really incredible. So, WOW Event Center on Broadway. We are here with Ty Bechel. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yes.
Ty Bechel. Yeah. Ty is a recovering addict.
Alcoholic addict. Yeah.
Alcoholic addict. He's the author of 2 books. He's got one on the way, which is a fiction.
It'll be my first fiction release, yeah.
First
Reality
fiction.
or Madness, and anthology of fiction.
Very cool. And now you're a public speaker and the founder of Amare?
Amare.
Amare.
It's like if we're being technical, it's amare because it's Italian.
Amare.
It's the Italian verb for love. So.
Right on. Right on. Well, thanks for coming. And so I've heard your name around. I know that you did some public speaking at like Mike Adams Church, Lifehouse, other places and things like that. So I thought this could be kind of cool. I got your book, got through most of it, but I thought we would just, see how it goes and having you on. So could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a brief synopsis of, this journey you've been on?
And I mean, as you said, I'm in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. And really in no way does that make me special or unique, because there is a very large recovery community of people doing great things in the area. So I really, with my journey, I've been in Madison County my entire life. I always wanted to work with the community ever since I was a young kid. Things started changing. My family, my mom and dad got a divorce, and they started working what felt like they were working against each other, and I got caught in the mix. And I went to a few different schools in the area, grew up, got a little angry, started smoking pot, started drinking, and started getting away from my studies, started getting away from the sports, and just thought, you know what, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to have a good time. And I didn't think it was going to end up the way that it did, and ended up getting my wisdom teeth pulled. Tried Vicodin for the first time as a pain reliever from the dentist, and I started mixing the two, and that's really where it began. And there's a large chunk of time within my life that is time that I wasn't really proud of, but for me to get over it, I had to go ahead and face it, make the amends that I had to make, and let people know that that's not really who I am, and that's definitely not who I want to be. And on August 19th, 2012, was my sober date, and things drastically changed. I think we'll probably get more into that as the show goes on. And then I just got heavily involved in the community, started Amare, wrote a play, wrote the book, started helping people within Amare, and things just started prospering from there. I made allies, and this is where I'm at, right here at the table with Joe Moran with Untapped.
Hey, yeah, you're married and you've got 4 kids, you say?
Yes, they're at home.
Right on.
Where they need to be. Yeah, they're great kids. 12, 8, 4, and 3. I have Irish twins.
8, 4, and 3.
Yeah.
Irish twins, like a year apart.
Yeah, that's what I've never heard the term until after the boys were both born. Like, you got Irish twins. I'm like, what does that mean? I guess it's when they're 2 are born like within a year of each other. So.
Right on. Okay, well, let's start at the beginning. So you say that you had an okay upbringing, you got really angry. I read, I think at the beginning of the book opens up with you were looking for weed at your grandma's house.
Yes. She is yes, it was, my friends, all my buddies were smoking, and I was afraid to smoke in front of them of something embarrassing happening. And I knew where I can get it, so I ended up taking some and trying it for the first time. And literally when I did it, I didn't know what I was really in for, and I watched what they did and how they would make like a pipe, I guess, out of aluminum foil. And my mom was at work. I was at my mom's house for the weekend, and I took my first hit, made my eyes go cross-eyed, my head hit the table. I couldn't quit coughing. And I literally felt like I was in this dream state. I kept watching. I really felt like I was in the Nightmare on Elm Street, the original 1984 version, when Johnny Depp's watching TV. He's got the TV on his lap. Because that's what I was doing. I had a black and white TV on my lap. I think like a Chicago Bulls game was on, but I just felt really strange. And I realized that I didn't really think about the things that I used to think about. Like, did I fit in? Was I cute enough around this girl? And suddenly all of my worries just went away. I wasn't mad at my dad or my mom within that moment.
So you were like, you would have anxiety with like, maybe you didn't realize it, but like you had some like moments where you felt anxious and or like you were second guessing yourself. And then whenever you would smoke, like those things would go away.
I guess you could say it was anxiety. And, you know, growing up, being a kid, wondering if you fit in, wondering if you're good enough, all those things. And I'm an overthinker anyways. So I would constantly think, and it quieted me. And I think that's what attracted to me right away, as I didn't have to think.
So you went from weed or cannabis. You go from weed to alcohol to working at IHOP. And then there was skip ahead a little bit. You started doing the Vicodin, and then the Oxy.
Yeah.
And so from there, that's whenever.
Oh yeah, things started getting out of control.
So I think with the Oxy, like there was a moment where people wanted you to snort the Oxy, like they cut it up, and you were like really apprehensive. But that was kind of like a defining moment because like that's where it started, and I guess after that you started to.
Yeah, and again, like I said, it's not my proudest moment, but I've kind of tackled this story with courage and to share it, and however people think of me after the story, that's completely up to them. Their opinion of me is none of my business.
Yeah.
And yes, it started with the Oxy. It went from marijuana to alcohol, and then drinking all the time, hanging out with a bunch of the older crowd, feeling cool, feeling like I fit in somewhere. I drank and I felt like I could talk to girls easier, that liquid courage. And then when I got my wisdom teeth pulled, the dentist prescribed me 20. And he was really cool. He warned me, said, hey, these can be dangerous. You're only taking them for, the pain. Don't take them if you don't need to. But once I took them, once I put the two in my mouth and I ingested them, about 15 minutes later, it was this feeling of elation. And I'm always kind of cautious when I say that because I don't want people to say, ooh, I want to do that. I'm like proceeding with caution. Like, if you don't have to take it, don't take it. I'd much rather see you meditate if you want to get to a state of elation and jubilation. So I did that, and then I started mixing it with alcohol, and it just was all the time. And I ended up getting to the point because it progressed from Oxycontin, or from Vicodin to Percocets, from Percocets to Oxycontin. And it was, at that time, I don't think you can do it now, but at that time you can take the coating off of Oxycontin and then you can crush them up. And it was I guess one way you can describe it is what I felt that enlightenment or heaven would be. I had no worries. I had no concerns. I thought I could do anything. I didn't second guess myself. And unfortunately, you progress and your tolerance builds. And you start doing things that you're not really proud of, that you typically regret after it happens, after you get your score, after you get your high, and really tears the family apart. Because, really, if we're looking at addiction, I know there's debate, is it a disease or not a disease? But for argument's sake, it's a family disease. It takes the whole family. It will start ripping it apart. And that's really what started happening with me. And people that still love me today at the time didn't know what to do. I was stealing from them. And we shouldn't steal from people. I knew that. But the way that the drugs once it would enter your body, and once it would leave, once you started having withdrawals, it turns you into a different person. You don't want to be sick. Opiate withdrawals, if you've ever had the flu, it's miserable. You're miserable. You don't feel right. Your body aches. Your head's foggy. That's what.
How long does that typically take to get through?
The initial physical withdrawals to where the pain will finally go away and you can sleep, anywhere from 4 to 7 days, but you're still irritable for a while, still anxious, You can get triggered, and I mean that in a substance abuse way. Seeing things, hearing things, going down certain driveway, like highways and stuff like that. And the withdrawals were just horrible. And that's what kind of, when it progresses to that, that's what kind of keeps you in the sickness, is you don't want to feel that pain, that physical pain. Your knees hurt. You feel like your skin is uncomfortable. You can't even put a Q-tip in your ear when you're withdrawing. It's just so sensitive. You're sensitive to sound, taste. There's just a strange taste in your mouth. You usually have diarrhea. Vomiting can come along with it. It's really grotesque, and it's really dirty. And it's nothing I wish on my worst enemy, you know, and it's not a pleasant experience.
Yeah, I know. Even asking these questions, I know you mentioned that, you know, you're not the proudest of moments, you know, back then. But I think I'm interested in the build up to it, only because I think what is the outcome from what I know of you, which is, you know, relatively little. You know what I'm saying? But I still think the story, as it, you know, kind of unfolding, watching it from a distance, is really remarkable, because you don't hear a lot of people who have a lot of success stories after, you know, taking drugs and stuff. So I appreciate you sharing those things. I am wondering though, was there a moment? So okay, if you could just kind of take us through. I don't know. I guess the first time you used, was that like heavily? Was that like the moment where you felt like heaven? Is that where that?
Well, when I first took the Vicodin, I had that feeling.
With the Vicodin.
And then, you know, you've probably heard the term chasing the dragon. You're chasing that feeling. You want to constantly chase it. And it usually doesn't last as long. And you're trying to get it constantly and feel. And then eventually with opiates, it got to me to the point where I was just trying not to get sick, to feel normal, to shower, to brush my teeth, to engage with other people and somewhat be social. It got to the point where I got down to about 165 pounds, and I would avoid people I would see at Walmart. Like I would see them and I would duck and I would run away from them. And there's a few people that I don't even remember seeing that had seen me, and they just said I looked just miserable. I didn't look like me. So,
was there a moment where you thought like all was lost, like the rock bottom moment where you were like, okay, if I don't change something now? Can you just kind of describe what that feeling was? When did you decide to make the change? How did that happen?
Man, rock bottom. You know, I've been taught over the past few years, rock bottom is when we quit digging. There was multiple times that I wanted to quit. I wanted to stop. I knew my life was out of control and very unmanageable. You know, you get to the point where hope feels like it's gone, and you feel like you've made everybody upset and you've burnt all your bridges. And you get to the point of demoralization where you start thinking, like, does it even matter if I'm here? Should I stop? Should I end it? You know, because I ended up in Kettler a few times.
Granite City.
Yeah. And down in Granite City. And, you know, I was in there three different times, I believe. 2 for 2 failed suicide attempts. You know, it got to the point where I remember one night it was a Halloween. I can't remember how many years ago it was. But it was a Halloween party, and I drank a whole bunch of alcohol. I took a whole bunch of Xanax. I took a whole bunch of opiates. I don't even remember what I was taking handfuls of stuff. And my significant other was upset. I was upset. There was some exchanging. You know how conflict goes and it escalates. And I remember that moment. I remember even in the fall, I remember feeling that I'm never going to escape this. I am nothing but the bane of their existence. And I remember when we got to the house in Alton, I ran downstairs to the basement and I grabbed an extension cord, a brown extension cord, and I threw it around the rafters. I grabbed the chair and I threw it around my neck, and I kicked the chair out from under me. And she comes running down to argue. You know, she wasn't done saying what she wanted to say. And I remember it was almost sobering, and I was trying to grab the thing around my neck, the cord around my neck. I didn't want it there anymore. And her mom had to run downstairs. I don't remember if she yelled at her mom, but ran downstairs with scissors and cut me down. And I ended up going to Kettler for that. I still wasn't done yet. I ended up still continuing to use after that. And this is the cunning, baffling, powerful part of addiction, and or alcoholism. And I would continue on. We had my significant other. We had a daughter at the time, and that wasn't even enough to stop. I wanted to, and things would go on, and I would eventually steal my brother's bow and arrow. He's a pro MMA fighter at the time. He was amateur, but he could have ended it real quick. You know what I mean? And he didn't. This was like the second or third time that I stole it, and he was supposed to go to a bow hunting trip down in, I believe, Texas, maybe some reservation thing that they do, like wild boars. I remember calling me. This was the point I wasn't seeing my daughters. I wasn't really allowed at my mom's, even though I would still go there. And I stole my brother's bow, and I pawned it for $90, and went to Hartford, and was with someone that was using. I ended up taking their drugs because I wanted more. They ended up kicking me out. So now I have my family that doesn't want me around. I had the people that I was using didn't want me around. And I'm standing in Hartford, and my brother calls crying. He got off work early that day, crying, and he doesn't really cry. He was upset, and he said, I talked to a police officer that we both knew, a mutual police officer. I used to play ball with a few of them, softball, before my life spun out of control. And he said, the officer asked me if I loved you, and I told him yes. And he said, okay, well, if you do, then you need to call the police. And he called the police. I ended up going to detox. They ended up putting a warrant out, and I came home, and we ended up getting an attorney on the fact that the charge that they were trying to charge me with was residential burglary. But it was from my own house, and they were supposed to amend it, but the detective didn't amend it, so my family got an attorney. He said, lay low, let me try to figure some things out. And I ended up using again. It was like a day after being home from detox. I took a whole bunch of Xanax and a whole bunch of Vicodin, and my brother called the police on me again. And this is how crazy it was. I knew the police were coming. He told me he called them again. So I was scruffy, and I ended up going, I'm like, okay, they're coming. I'm going to go to jail. I'm not going to run from them, whatever. I was actually looking forward to going to jail, oddly enough. So in my mind, I was like, I'm going to go inside and I'm going to shave so I look good for my mug shot. This is where my mind was. And the funny thing is I did.
You're going to go look good for your, you're going to get like dolled up to look good for your mug shot.
At least my face, because, they usually do from the chest up.
Were you planning on smiling in this mug shot?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Whatever I was thinking. And the funny thing is I missed a whole patch of hair right on my neck. So it was like a square. Oh, wow. So it completely defeated the purpose. And, and I can laugh about that today. But the reality is there's people going through this daily. And it's only gotten worse. And it doesn't seem like we've actually made any headway. But, yeah, and they took me to jail. And I went to the East Dalton Police Department and ended up going to Madison County for a while. Until they got me in front of the judge, which led me to Madison County Drug Court.
Wow. And then from there, so then when did you know that you were like, okay, I'm it, that's it. I'm done using, and I'm going to do everything I can.
You would think being in jail, in Madison County Jail, because their customer service isn't really great, their mattresses aren't really the softest, and they don't give you any pillows. So you would think that would be a moment of, hey, get it together. I
had to spend the night in Madison County one time.
Did you?
I did, yeah. And so, just a real quick side story. I got pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt, and I did not pay the ticket, and I had completely forgotten about it. I think I had moved back to Phoenix for a while, and I come back home, and I can't remember. A buddy of mine went to the ball game, and I'm in Wood River, and I get pulled over, and all of a sudden, there's another cop car that comes. About 10 minutes go by, and there comes another cop car. And I'm like, "It's a seatbelt," and I think I got pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt. I wear my seatbelt all the time now. But I got pulled over, and anyway, I had to go, and it was a Thursday night, and we got back from the ball game. I got pulled over after I dropped him off, and spent the night in Madison County. And what really, man. I had a buddy come down and he posted bail. But dude, you're right. There was no. It was metal. It was a metal cot. There was no pillow. And then there was these guys. There was these fellas in there, And they were just talking all night long. And I'm like, I never want to come back to this place. And then the next day I had somebody come post bail at like 10 a.m. They didn't release me till 3. And they almost said, and it was like a holiday weekend or something. It was like Martin Luther King or something. But, so you're going to have an extended 3 days, and judge wasn't in on Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Yep.
And they were like, well, we don't know if we're going to be able to release you today. You might have to spend the weekend at here. I'm like, no, they keep posting it. So anyway, it was that was my one night in the clink. So I know anyway, I've had that experience, but anyway, keep going.
Yeah, it's definitely not a fun place. And I mean, you would think that I'd be like, okay, I sobered up in there, and I don't want to do this again. And I got in drug court. The attorney was able to get me out. I think I was there like 3 weeks or something like that. And they got me out. And I met Judge Knapp from Madison. She's the circuit judge that oversees the mental health court and Madison County Drug Court. She's an amazing woman. Takes this program very seriously. She may tell you a few things you may not want to hear, but she knows that you need to hear it. And the first time I met her, I remember her leaning over her. She was sitting up on the top, whatever you call that, and she leaned over, and she was like, "Mr. Bechel." I'm like, "Yes." She's like, "I don't think you understand how hard your attorney had to work to get you out and get you in my program." I'm like, "Yes, ma'am." I went in there and I thought I was going to do well. I was doing well. Then I got kidney stones. I'm like, well, here's my excuse. I got kidney stones. It hurts because they don't care if your arm's chopped off. You're not taking any narcotics. You better take some Aleve or maybe a baby aspirin, and you're good. Well, I took some, and then I struggled, and I ended up going to rehab. I left on the 23rd, so I left my daughters on Christmas because I knew I had to do something. And I went and I had kidney stones again when I was in there. And at the time, they didn't really, it wasn't scheduled, but it's scheduled now by the DEA. And I think it's like a Schedule 4 is tramadol. Tramadol is a synthetic opioid. And at the time, I didn't really know it. But now it makes sense why I would want to take 15, 20 at a time. I kept taking those. I'm like, well, it doesn't detect on a drug test. I'll keep taking those. And just kept myself sick. And I kept myself sick. So I wasn't really involved in any real solutions. Because really when you really break down addiction, when it starts getting like this, it's not even the drugs and the alcohol that are the problem. It's the thinking. Mm-hmm. It boils down to the thinking. Then you realize that drugs and alcohol are really kind of just a symbol. Then you got to kind of change yourself, and you got to be willing to want to change. And this goes for really anything. If we want to improve any of our predicaments, we have to say, you know what, I want to make this change. I'm going to do what's necessary. So I had to do that, and I wasn't really straight right away. I would use. They'd take me in custody because they were afraid that I would overdose and die. I would lie. I would time my drops. And I had a hard counselor who spent 24 years in, I believe, the Air Force. He wasn't hearing it. He's done substance abuse counseling for a long time. I think most of the time he was in the Air Force. And then the probation officer that I had wasn't having it. One day, me and the probation officer were on the phone. I was at group, and the counselor said, hey, he wants to talk to you. So I called him, and we were out there smoking. I'm like, hey, yeah, I heard you wanted to talk. He's like, yeah, I do. And he's like, Mr. Gab, you got it. Because I was like, hey, how you doing? He's like, I'm okay. He's like, you got the gift of gab, don't you, Mr. Bechel? I'm like, well, yeah, I do. And I thought he was conversating, just having a... Well, it turned, I need to shut my mouth real quick and listen. And I have mad love for him today. He told me what I needed to hear because I was just really lying to myself. I was lying to the counselor. I was lying to my family. And he told me I needed to be quiet. I needed to quit talking in group, and I needed to go in there and listen and see what I can hear because obviously what I'm doing wasn't working. I took that to heart, and I was mad at him at the time. I still didn't do well. I would get string together 30 days, 60 days. And it got to the point where court was like, Judge Knapp was like, listen, you got to go to long term. We're running out of options. We don't even know if you can't help yourself, we can't help you. So I went to long term 45 days, came home, and was doing well. My daughter's mom let me come back. I wasn't really great at coping yet, and we got in an argument, and I was angry. I got angry, and angry was one of my biggest things that I didn't like. Angry makes me feel really gross and dirty inside, and I left. I said, you know what? I found my excuse again. I went and I went on about a 2-week bender. I wasn't talking to the kids. I was at my mom's house. It led up to this point. I was at my mom's house. We went and got some stuff and came back to my mother's house. And she woke up in the morning. She said, listen, if this guy's here when I get out of the shower, I'm calling the police. And like poof, magic. Like I saw like a trail of smoke and he was gone. You know, he heard cops and like, where'd he go? And that's a joke, by the way. He really put his shoes on very quick and ran out.
Did I miss the joke?
Huh?
Did I miss
He
the
just
joke?
poof, disappeared.
Oh, yeah, he just like went away.
Yeah. Yeah.
I normally give a courtesy laugh at those things,
Yeah.
but I'm just like, I'm sorry.
I attempt to be funny sometimes, and it just doesn't pan over very well.
Story of my life. I say the funniest things, and everybody's like,
Now you're like, now I got to explain it.
yeah, that's
Instead of
not,
like, it's really not funny.
It's really not funny. No, say it again. No, trust me.
Yeah, it's done and gone.
Then you say it again, and then it's more awkward the second time around. Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, and my mom, you know, and he left, and she came out, and at this point, I've kind of taken her hostage at her house, not literally, but I wouldn't leave. I was eating her food. I wasn't paying rent. I was just miserable. And she looked at me and says, listen, I don't want you here when I get home. She told me that a million times before, but just the look in her eye, I believed her this time. She left for work. I'm at her house in East Alton. It's quiet in the house. All I hear is the ceiling fan and the chain clinking against the glass. Probation officer calls the cell phone, and I answer it, and he goes, I say hello, and he's like, why haven't you been in group? And I didn't have it. I was quiet. He's like, it's because you don't want to be there. I was like, no, not really. I was like, I don't even want to be here. He's like, well, I want you to turn yourself in. And for whatever reason, I asked him if I can go to detox. He said, yeah, but you're turning yourself in afterwards. I said, okay. We hang up the phone, and again, it's quiet in the house, and I look at my brother's dog, Rocky. He's kind of laying there just looking at me. You know, dogs, I think, kind of sense when people are feeling all out of sorts. Yeah. And he came and he put his head on my lap and just looked at me and nudged me. And I looked at him, and that even made me want to cry. And I remember looking at my mom's window. There was an oak tree that stood right outside that window. And I remember looking at the winds blowing, or the leaves blowing in the wind. And I looked at the sky, and it was blue. And I looked at this tree just doing what trees do. And I fell to my knees, and I started bawling, just bawling, heavy sobs. And for the first time in my life, I think I genuinely prayed because I didn't know what else to do. I was spiritually, emotionally bankrupt. And I looked up, and I just started praying. I said, if there is any reason that I'm supposed to be here, then help me. Because I cannot go on like this. And if not, take me out, because I really do not want to be in this world any longer. You know, we were talking before the show about aliens. Mm-hmm. I felt like one. I felt like I didn't belong here. I felt different. Drugs and alcohol made that kind of go away until they didn't any longer. It just wore off. And then I was left with me and feeling like I didn't belong in this world. I got tired of seeing all the strife. I got tired of seeing the ugliness that human beings can do to one another. And I wanted out. And the drugs weren't allowing me to escape anymore. I literally created a hell, my own personal hell. And, you know, and I kind of tell people this is just my idea. But I don't know if hell is really a place we go after we die. I felt like I would, because, you know, I always grew up hearing that hell was daily torment. Same thing over and over and over. That's exactly what my life was. And I was doing the same thing, and I was miserable. My family didn't want me there. I didn't want to be here. But I would relive it every day. You know, and but I prayed. And the weird thing is the obsession to use, which I think I spent more time thinking about using, how I was going to get it, how I was going to get the money to get it, how I was going to go over to St. Louis to get it, than I actually did using. That obsession left, and it left me. My mom came home, and she was reluctant at first, but she decided to go ahead and take me to detox. I went 5 days. I called my probation officer when I got down there. And I kept my word for really the first time in a very long time. And I went there for 5 days. I came home. I told him I was going to turn myself in later that evening. I was going to see my family, and I did. I went into the Madison County Jail, and I was sitting at that buzzer. I was like, man, do I really want to hit this?
So what were you turning yourself in for again?
They put a warrant out for me because I didn't go to court and I wasn't going to groups. And I did it. I went and I hit that buzzer. And the officer was like, "Welcome to Madison County Jail. May I help you?" No, he really didn't say that. He was like, "What?" And I'm like, "I'm here to turn myself in."
It's like, "Welcome. All right, we got tea and coffee. Grab a donut." You know?
No doubt. You want some lemon with that water. Yeah. And he came, and the probation officer said he would only keep me there a week. And he didn't. He kept me there 2. But I was okay. I felt like for the very first time in my life, I was okay. I was safe. I read a whole James Patterson book, one of the Alex Cross volumes. I don't even really remember which one it was, but I read the whole thing. And I prayed every day.
When you say that obsession left, do you think that was because of prayer or some sort of divine intervention?
Yes, I really do. In my life, I do.
Because I never heard that, like that obsession left. You know what I'm saying? Like that obsession is always there, but for it to just kind of go away, you felt the relief of that.
Yes, it's very strange. It was a very strange feeling. It definitely was something of a paramount force, whether that it was my brain activating on all cylinders and saying, I'm going to go ahead and I hear you, I'm going to relieve this. Or, I am a firm believer of God now after this moment, no doubt. And what we choose to call God, and that's up to people in their own conception. Mm-hmm. I'm a believer that God is beyond space and time and is this energy that is there, that is. And I was taught, whether you think God's a guy, a male, a woman, or just energy, it's polite. And this energy is only going to enter our lives when we invite it in our lives. And in that moment, in my desperation, the pain was great enough, I said, I need your help. And the obsession was gone. And I was okay to go to detox. I was okay to go to jail. And when they finally took me in front of Judge Knapp, she's like, listen, we don't know what else to do. They gave me 3 options. They said, go to a 3 to 6 month program in Granite City. We'll put you on termination 30 days out, and you got to go to a meeting every day, and we'll see where you're at, recovery support meeting. Or you can go to a place up in Irving, Illinois. It's a long-term recovery home. It was 6 months to 2 years. I didn't even have to think. I said, I want to go to the long-term up in Irving. I need to get out of here for a little bit. I need to work on me and the relationship of whatever. This time it was whatever that was, whatever was going on in me. And I left. They let me out that day. I went home for a little bit. And a guy I know, a good friend of mine, took me up there. I got really involved. They had a food pantry. They sheltered one dog for a little bit until it got adopted. They did flag honor. You'd have to put the flag up, take it down, the American flag. You had to do chores. I just got heavily involved. And again, I've prayed every day that I get up and say, Thy will, not mine, get me through today. And I pray every night saying, thank you for getting me through today and allowing me to be clean and sober one more day. And here, I'm here. I'm here with you, and I ran into you. I haven't seen you in a while since Mavis. I happened to run into you at Shop and Save getting gas, and you were talking about the book.
I had just gotten the book because I had you on my mind, and I ordered this one, and then you gave me the second book, your second book, and so it was. I kind of felt like, okay, because you've been on my mind for probably, 2 or 3 weeks, who we're gonna have, as a guest on the podcast, and so whenever I saw you, I'm like, I know he knows me, and I know him, and so you had already gotten in your car by the time I had gotten out of the store. And I guess I knocked on your window, and you're like, "What the hell?"
I was like, "I ain't got no change, sir. I'm sorry."
Yeah, but no, I'm glad we were able to run into each other because this topic is important. No matter how hard it might be for people to hear, or even, I'm sure for you. And so, let me ask you this: reading through the book, you already had what I think maybe you already had patterns of like. I don't know whether it's selfishness or whatever, whatever that looks like. Sorry, I got distracted for a second. You had, maybe you had these patterns of, selfishness isn't a good word, but you were always thinking of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Oh,
always
that's
thinking,
selfishness, self-centeredness, and selfishness, right there.
But I think, was that pre-drugs? I mean, was that like so what I'm getting at is like you had these things naturally that maybe you had to work through. But then, okay, you're trying to get off, you're trying to get sober, but you get kidney stones or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're back into it, and then they happen again, and then you get on the tramadol, and then all these things. So did you feel like that there was like this something resistance, from elsewhere? Was it, because it seems like a really big mountain to come through naturally and, physically, and like what was happening, I guess on the regular basis, but it seems like there was a big mountain or mudslide to climb just to kind of get to that spot where you felt it leave.
I mean, and it was. I mean, there was a lot of anger there. Like when my parents got divorced, I held on to that resentment. And resentments are like the number one offender for us, especially if we get angry and maybe this anger turns into rage. And then if this rage turns into aggression, which is a behavior, we got to do something about that. And I really think before I got full-blown aggressive or acted out in aggression as a type of behavior, I had the drugs. Because, there was a stint in my life where my grandmother did raise me for about, 5-6 years, something like that. Yeah. And the feeling that I had the day that I fell on my knees and I bawled and I prayed genuinely for the first time is the same feeling I would have when I was with my grandma. Peace. Things were going to be okay.
You speak a lot about her in the book, and like I guess whenever she passed away, that was like really traumatic
really
experience.
I was actually mad at her that she gave up, because she could have went to the hospital and they could have she could have got better. She could have got better, and I got mad at her for that because my grandmother was always a fighter from her moment of growing up and what she went through and helping raise her sisters. And I remember when she said she was done and she wanted to pass away at home, and I was selfish. I was like, you can't leave me. You can't leave me. And yeah.
Do you still feel that way now? I mean, are you?
No. It was her time. It was her life, and she lived her life. She was 71. So, wow. And I love her, and I prayed to her a lot. I wouldn't say that she's spoken to me or anything, but there's moments that I feel that I'd like to tell myself that she's there with me, saying things are gonna be okay. Especially in what's going on today, and how social media has just literally broken down our communications as people. And we've allowed ourselves to become confined in these boxes, and we keep trying to figure out what box to fit in. I've been there. And I always tell people, especially when I do public speaking, if I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on. If you need to use me as a punching bag so you guys can get along, then use me. Because it doesn't have to be this way. And I don't even know why I just started talking about that, but...
Well, that's okay, because there is something in your book, I think, where you were talking about when your Christina was given birth to your first child. You felt a sense of human connectedness. Like you felt like you belonged there, even though, that her family was still not too happy with you, but you felt the sense of human connectedness. And that's something that kind of turned me on. But, this isn't... There's got to be, I knew that there had to be some depth to you. And so for you to say that, talking about social media and things.
Yeah, looking at my daughter for the first time.
That you might have a perspective on life that a lot of us don't have. And we're all kind of walking around in the screens and yeah, there's a lot of people I think that feel detached. I know personally, I feel detached sometimes, like, especially like with my daughter, or my kids that trying to get my attention, and I'm trying to return a message, or I'm reading something, or I'm I'm just scrolling through, and I'm like, gosh, I gotta set that aside, because there is a lot of that. But you seem to like it might hit you on more of a deeper level, like you just you really feel like that there's something, there's a discord, that there's really something going on.
Yeah, and I think that's, for me, I kind of felt that in my life, and I think think that's when transformation is happening. I really do, and I think there is, because I mean, if we were to lay out all the knowledge in the universe, in the galaxy, right here on the table, even us in this room would only know a speck. So transformation, in Marcus Aurelius' book Meditations that he wrote in his later years, you know, he was a Stoic and he was a Roman emperor and all this stuff. There's one piece in there that really, really stuck out to me. Is he said, "Life is but an opinion, and the universe is transformation." And when I read that in that book, it really, there is a sense of connectedness. It really is.
Life is an opinion. The universe
is transformation.
It's transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
Yeah,
when he sit on that one for a while.
Yeah. and this is a guy that saw war. This was a guy that questioned if what he was doing was right, and all these things. And this was his later years, and he was reflecting another human being back in 89 AD or BC or whatever it was. And he's writing this, and he's questioning the same things that I think a lot of us have questioned.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and there was a connectedness. Looking at my daughter that day, from just the first time holding her, I got choked up. Like,
it's a crazy feeling, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's a crazy feeling. Like, I've been a Christian for many years, and then they always talk about the love of God. You know, you need to fall in love with Jesus, which I never knew really how to fall in love with Jesus, to be honest. You know, it's just kind of like this whatever, and I'm like, okay, maybe, and you know, love God, love people. Okay, love. However they teach you to love God. I never had that emotional connection with God. Mm-hmm. You know, it was never emotional for me. But so it was always kind of, I didn't know what they were talking about. But the moment my daughter was born, it was like, if God's love is anything like this, I understand what the love of God is. You know, I understand love. I think it was the first time where I really understood unconditional. You know, it's not it was emotional and, you know, it's still, you know, there's emotion attached to it, but it's more of a just that connection. Yeah. And I think that's what love is. I think that's where it comes from, is that connection, that, you know, willingness, that going, you know, it's an action, you know, it's a choice. And so anyway, yeah. So anyway, it was crazy. Yeah. Having a child was crazy.
Yeah, it's that that feeling. Just, is this what it is?
Yeah.
Is this what this is?
Yeah.
And I believe it is connection. You know, they've been looking for the God particle for many years, and I think it's like the Higgs boson.
Higgs boson. I think it was in Switzerland, Sweden, or something.
And I guess what they're saying is it's the last piece that connects the rest. Mm-hmm. Remarkable.
It's wild. So we could talk about the Higgs boson. I know a little bit about it, but I know it's two, you know, beams of light that they you know, spin around really fast, and then when the two lights hit, so they found this data. So there was an explosion, it was a tiny explosion, you know, but there's a lot of data that came through it, these subatomic particles or whatever. But at the end of this documentary I was watching, it's called Particle Fever. It's kind of neat because there's these type A personalities, and they're all kind of nerdy people who are just like, oh, let's look at data, you know, but they're like really like, this is what they're passionate about. I guess at the end of it, they I can't even remember, just watch it, but they say we're 50% this and we're 50% that, but there's still like this mystery and there's something that we're missing still. And I just, even though it's the God particle, they're still going, but there's still something. There's still something. So anyway.
And I think that's something we got to feel, that something, like when we both saw our daughters.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, okay, so then you've got emotion, you know, that you have to deal with as a human being. And that's a whole nother, I can't get it. I mean, these are the conversations that we have over our bonfires and stuff, man. Like, well, we get into these type of talks quite often with me and a couple of my friends, but I don't want to go too far off track. But we could definitely do a part 2 on that. Let's get back to the book real quick. I wanted to ask you a couple things about the book, and then where you're at now, public speaking, things like that. So when you started to write the book, one of the questions that I have, and this kind of occurred to me whenever I was reading about your grandma and her passing away. Was there a specific, maybe not necessarily that, but was there a specific part of the book where it was really hard for you to go back to relive that may have been kind of maybe tempting, or maybe some sort of like, man, because I mean, you get pretty personal in the book when you talk about, you know, losing the V, you know, and things, which I admire. I'm not saying anything against that. I'm just saying, like, I like that takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there to do it. Like doing a podcast, it takes courage to put yourself out there and do things like that. So I'm just wondering if there's anything in there that you were like,
well, I did. I time warped is what I did.
Okay.
Not literally. I literally had to go back in time. I became a time traveler for a little bit, and I went back and I replaced myself and remembered it the best that I could from losing my virginity. And I remember that feeling, and what really struck me odd is when I did it, is I remember the look that she had on her face. She's a great woman. She's married today. I wish nothing but the best for her, but I remember the look on her face. She just felt like she was embarrassed, maybe. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. That's what I remember. And today, these many years later, when I was writing the book, I'm like, man, I wouldn't want her to be embarrassed. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't like to be embarrassed. But getting very descriptive in the drug use, and that was hard. It's not that it triggered me to want to use, because I didn't want to use, but it made me feel those feelings again of disconnection, of chasing that dragon, of the way my body felt, the smells, and just the conversations that we had in the car were not full of any substance. It was full of just how spiritually sick I was. Mm-hmm. And
so when you're writing the book, you know, whatever it's about using or whatever memory you had, the details would come back, like the smell, the sound, the feelings of what you were going through. Like that's really interesting.
And I remember when I wrote about my grandmother passing away, when I grabbed her hand and just how her skin felt, and how her knuckles felt, and how she was getting cold. Mm-hmm. And I remember grabbing that and telling her I loved her. And I remember looking at her, and they put the eye patch cotton stuff on her eyes to keep them closed. And I just remember that feeling in the room. It was awkward. And getting very descriptive. I really got enthralled in the moment. I went, like I said, I time traveled. Yeah. And I was there kind of like you would see in the It's a Wonderful Life, which we're probably going to see it starting tomorrow.
Didn't you make a reference to that?
I think so.
I think you did, yeah.
And it's like I was there looking what was going on, and I did my best to convey it so I can turn around and share it with people. Because when I wrote the first volume, Heroin Rising: A Tale of True Terror, I didn't write it necessarily for people in seeking recovery or an addiction. I wrote it for people that may not understand addiction, right. And I tried to detail and categorize my thoughts, my feelings, as much as I could so they can feel it. Like I had one review from it. The lady's like, I don't even like this guy, and which that's okay. You read this, if you don't know me, you may not like me, and that's okay, because if you read that, I was kind of mean. Yeah. I did some very selfish, very self-centered things.
See, but those are the details I think that, you know, I think that's what you're looking for, is the details of your life, like what got you to the point. And those are important details. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you know, I got addicted to drugs. Like, oh, okay, but where's the why? You know, and how does it come about?
And that's why I love in my fiction, and one of my short stories, Origins of a Boy Named Lucy, that'll be in the Reality Man.
Did you do any writing before this book?
I did. I always wanted to write, but in my addiction, of course, I was more worried about other stuff. But sure. I started writing short stories. The very first thing I wrote was it's a 28,000 word novella called Bullied to the Death. It's kind of a coming of age, superhero-esque type of story. And I have it with an editor. They're actually going to look at it. It's a first draft. It hasn't even been, I haven't went through and edited anything. But like in Origins of a Boy Named Lucy, that short story, it's about 5,000 words. I love transformation. Maybe it's because of what I went through, and I try to capture that. Origins of a Boy Named Lucy is about Lucifer, but coming from how we would see how Lucifer turned into Lucifer, not necessarily in the biblical sense, but he was in this little town and everybody got along, but then all of a sudden this guy showed up out of nowhere and things started changing. He didn't know what was going on, and Lucy, that's what his mom would call him, he had some superpowers, to say the least. It was a peaceful time. They believed in honoring the trees. Like if they cut it down and built structures, they would honor the trees. And he ends up getting banished by some series of events, and he runs to the woods and he's isolated. So now he's resentful and he's angry, and he starts changing. And I like that. So having an overarching storyline and a character, these character arcs of that transformation, because I can relate to that, because I know I started off, I wasn't always angry. I was I was angry until I got with my grandmother. I wasn't angry. We moved. I was out of her presence. I started getting angry again, resentful, and just how the things ups and the ebbs and flows of life that we think that a lot of us, we think we can avoid, but I don't think we can. And I think we try, and then we don't understand it, and we don't understand the emotions that we're feeling or why we're feeling it, because we haven't really been taught how to necessarily examine that. Like if we want to get to truth.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, because there is this, it comes to acceptance when you realize that the world is chaotic. And that humans.
But it's so damn beautiful, though.
Right.
It's so damn beautiful.
There is a balance. There's a line. There is something. There's so much beauty. It's bittersweet, right? I mean, like, there's so much awfulness, terrible, tragic things that happen day in and day out. But then on the flip side of it, we're like the lens of God. Like we are we can observe the universe. We can observe the galaxies, and we can see the majesty, so to speak. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Let me ask you this though: if you say that you don't believe necessarily in a place like hell, that like after we die we go to this place, like this is, and then you write a book, The Origins of Lucy. So if the devil exists, what does he look like to you? What does it look like?
If I had to be honest, when I look in the mirror, because if there is this fine line and there is this balance, that is me. And I think this is one reason why I really liked Taoism, the yin and the yang.
Yeah.
Walking that balance. I mean, in Origins of a Boy Named Lucy, he starts getting disfigured by this mystery guy that shows up out of nowhere. His hair starts falling out. He gets resentful. Now all of a sudden he's judging how he looks outside, and he's feeling awful inside, and he wants to get even. He wants to get mad. He wants to get mad at this guy. And he starts getting mad at the people that said he was banished. He's like, how can you turn your back on me? You're dead to me now. I'm coming after you now. So I guess if we had to put a face, I would have to say it could be me. Could be you. Because I think we have that opportunity where our mind can take us to be Satan-like, to be evil. Or we can be benevolent. We can be kind. Because I know that I was really ending up a way that I didn't want to be.
It's so interesting because we both, I think everybody is equipped with those things, good and evil, maybe. I asked Josh this question the other day, or yesterday actually. Do violent thoughts ever roll through your head? And the reason why I asked him that was because I was kind of having like a moment. I was like, I was caught in a really, I was in a deep thought. I was like, just kind of examining and exploring these thoughts that were coming through my mind. And I all of a sudden I had this awareness, like I'm in my body, the flesh and blood thing. And then, it's like, what do you do with that? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, like this really violent act came into my brain. And I'm like, that is really weird. And then I just stopped. I'm like, where does that come from and why? Are we naturally, equipped with those things? Does that come with life and humanity? Is like the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. And that's a rabbit hole we could go down. But you're talking about existence of life and stuff or purpose or whatever. But it's kind of like where I dwell. Anyway, I know the feeling of being, kind of thrown back and forth. Not that I'm a malicious person by any stretch, but, I think we all have those attributes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, everybody's like, I would never murder someone. And I knew a guy that you would never think would happen until something happened where his wife cheated on him and he knew about it and it continued to happen and he got under the influence and he went and took matters in his own hand. He regretted it afterwards.
Oh yeah.
But
you never kill anybody. You never been at war. You know, like.
And I think our mind is more powerful than a lot of us tend to believe. And it's really funny when we talk about health. The brain is typically not talked about. We talk about our muscles and we talk about our skin.
Fitness, right? Yeah.
We talk about our skin and but what are we doing for the mind? Because I've been taught, and I've been doing this since I got clean and sober, praying and meditating. I was taught praying is for talking, having my time with a God that I understand, the conception of my God, and then meditating is for listening. That meditation I might read a daily meditation book. I may listen to a song, but in that moment, I'm just trying to embrace that 15 minutes of meditation. Hear what like some Buddhists will say, you got the monkey mind. It's going all over the place. What's going on? And I really think there's a way that we can pay attention to that. And a lot of us don't want to pay attention to it because we have that malicious thought and we're like, oh my God, I'm having this thought. Is there something wrong with me? But no, it's a thought. And I think everybody has had those thoughts.
Yeah.
Yet, there's always, I might not, you haven't murdered anybody yet. Have you been mad enough? Like some people with road rage. Do you even think, I don't know. I don't really get in road rage. But could it be in that moment that they get so angry? Remember we were talking about aggression. They get so angry, they get kicked into rage. And then out of that rage comes the behavior and they decide to get aggressive and they display their aggression. And then after it's said and done, they're like, oh my God, how did that just happen?
Yep. Next thing you know, there's a car accident. Somebody caused a car accident because you couldn't, the guy passed you or whatever the case may be.
And I think the health of the brain and the mind and neuroscience has opened up so much in the past 15, 20 years. Just how the brain works from the limbic system to the prefrontal cortex and just how we really operate as people. And there's actually some scholarly articles out there that says like meditation daily can help stop the depletion of like gray matter and like people with Alzheimer's and stuff. It's pretty remarkable.
Man, we're going to have to start wrapping up, which like regretfully, man.
So we're looking for part 2 maybe?
I think maybe. I feel like I could talk to you a little bit more. We didn't even really, we touched a little bit of the first book, but I don't think we got all the way through it. And then we still got the second book that we might be able to tap into.
There's a lot that's happened since then.
Right on, man. And so, but just a couple things, what are you doing now? You're public speaking at Amare. How do you pronounce that?
Amare. Yes. Amare, I say Amare, but, for the show to keep the continuity going, it's Amare. We're a 501c3. We're small, but we're pretty powerful. And I just mean small because we have all volunteer staff. We help people that are seeking recovery treatment. We'll link them up to services. We're rolling out $2,000 scholarships for people that are in recovery this spring. We got the funds set aside, so we're going to reach out to Lewis and Clark and set up a scholarship fund for a male and a female. We're getting ready to do a few of our recovery groups with some people in the community. We're getting really creative and inclusive. Creativity helps stimulate the brain. We want to teach them theater production partnering with a local theater. We want to do a creative writing class just to, kind of say you can do other things. And then we're working with like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we have someone locally that I think is going to work with us on that.
Very cool.
We're down at the Riverbend Family Ministries building. If you don't know Tammy, is Chris, you should. She is amazing. She works as an incubator for a few of us.
What's her last name?
Is Chris.
Tammy
down
in Wood River.
Yep. Everybody seems to know her.
I know that lady.
Yeah,
I know that lady.
Great woman.
Okay, so real quickly, I wanted to give you an opportunity to clear the air on your experience at Fox 2.
Yeah,
you were on Fox 2 News, and you were, I guess, in front of the camera, and they said, "Okay, it's go time," but they were looking for you. Tell us that story real quick.
It was like
because everybody said you had gotten nervous, but there was more to it.
Yeah, there was this was like I think the second interview because I was on KPLR. There's some panel show that they do. Dang it, what is it? It's not The View. Anyways, we were sitting around, and that's the first interview. But they wanted me to come back to do like a morning segment, afternoon segment. And we're sitting there waiting in the lobby. And I guess the guy, one of the camera or sound guys was supposed to come get us to get me mic'd up. And he comes bolting down there. He's like, are you Ty? I'm like, oh, yeah. He's like, we got to go. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you're getting ready to go on air and they need you. And I'm like, what? He's like, and we're running, and he's running backwards. It seems like he's done this before. He's running backwards, and he's handing me the mic, and I'm trying to pull it up through my shirt so the cord isn't seen. And I put it on, and he's like, okay, test. And we're testing, and he's like, okay, now get out there. And we get to and we're out there. And the host was stalling. He was trying to talk until I got there. And I come in, kind of like a Dick Van Dyke type of move. And I'm sitting there, I'm out of breath, and I'm trying not to.
Right.
And I appear very, very nervous, and I'm not nervous. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm taking like little bitty breaths, and it was a moment. It was a moment in my life, and whether the interview was good and people thought I was silly, I don't care. It was a moment. It's a part of my memory, and it was funny.
Yeah,
and it was really funny.
So like on live TV, and like there's a blank. Okay, really? And then here he is. That's funny. What was he doing? He was taking a deuce. You know, it's like, no. Well, man, thanks for coming on the show. I hope we could do this again. I'd like to tap into book number 2, Out of the Ashes, and maybe talk a little bit more about your fiction book that's coming out. Perfect. So again, thanks for coming. Want to give a shout out real quick to WOW Event Center here on Broadway. Again, thanks for letting us use your space. And Savannah Rose and her dad Jared were here tonight. She's going to school for video production is what she wants to major in. So she came out to observe all the way from Washington, Missouri, Union, Missouri, which is like an hour and a half away. So thanks for coming out. And Savannah and Jared, thanks for coming out. And I guess until next time, this is Untapped.
Goodbye.